I want to dive back into the gaming niche and in particular look at an altcoin project that had a complete rebrand in 2023. Now, the traditional gaming industry has seen exponential increases over the last decade. And I think it's only a matter of time before we see a mainstream game developer use Web3 technology and introduce it into what was traditionally Web2 gameplay. I think that's just a matter of time. We haven't seen that yet, but when that does happen, all eyes are going to be fully on the blockchain gaming niche. So today in this video, I want to dive into what has become one of the most favorite gaming projects in the industry, but should it make up part of your investment portfolio? And that project is, of course, known as Beam. If you enjoy the video, please hit the like button down below and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content like this. And of course, if you don't want to miss out on videos and you want to see them as soon as possible, hit the bell notification icon too. Finally, if you're looking for an ally and a community to walk you through the crypto markets on a weekly basis, which is so important to keep your finger on the pulse, then my 80/20 crypto newsletter might be something that's worth checking out. I'll leave a link to that in the description down below. And with all of that out of the way, let's focus back on Beam and the Beam network. Now, Beam is an open source blockchain that has been designed specifically for blockchain-based game development. And it wants to basically become the go-to for those developers that wish to access the Web3 capabilities while maintaining still speed, scalability, and security. So you can think along the lines of Immutable X or Gala Games. These are the competitors within this niche. This behind me is Beam's native website. And as you can see, it is quite different to most projects or protocols' main websites. There's no highlighting what Beam does on this page, and there's a reason for that, which I'll get to in a moment. But at the moment, all we can see are the different applications within Beam's ecosystem, which I'll touch on very shortly. But a couple of points before that, Beam was initially developed as a subnet within the Avalanche ecosystem. And the idea was to provide an infrastructure layer on top of which developers could build blockchain-based games. And now I believe there are up and over 30 different games that are being tested or launched within the Beam platform today. However, in addition to game development and the launch of games, Beam has expanded its ecosystem to include other native applications, such as Beam's companion app, which we can see in the top left of the screen here. And the idea of the companion app is to become an application that allows people to access all of Beam's assets. So any assets that gamers have within the ecosystem, such as NFTs, the companion app is designed to keep track of all of those. Then we also have what's called the Sphere Market, and this is Beam's native NFT marketplace. There we go. So the one-stop shop for gaming assets on Immutable ZK EVM and Beam. And that's another important point here. There is a link to Immutable ZK EVM, Immutable X, which again we'll get to shortly. But so remember that, we've got the Sphere Market NFT place. Then in addition to that, we've got the Beam Hub. And the Beam Hub is where gamers can come together to play tournaments and geek out about all things gaming. We can see the Beam Hub just behind me here, so we can discover new games. It's got games listed. Games Academy, so there's a bit of education on here, rewards. So this is like a platform where if you're obviously using the Beam network, you would be probably integrated into the Beam Hub to find out what's going on, what's being launched next, talking with other gamers. And then finally in the list, we have two other aspects. We've got the Beam Swap and the Beam Bridge. So Beam Swap can be used to swap in-game currencies, and then Beam Bridge, as the name suggests, lets you migrate assets into the Beam ecosystem. Now, the history of Beam is extremely important as a component of understanding this project as a whole. So to understand Beam, we first need to understand something else, which is called Merit Circle. And this is what we can see on the screen behind me now. So Beam originally started out as a decentralized autonomous organization, a DAO. And that is what's known as Merit Circle, and this was formed back in 2021, and it became the largest gaming DAO in the industry, and it was built to improve blockchain gaming experiences. However, in 2023, the DAO launched the Beam network, and this was launched with the intention of providing a user-friendly platform for games developers. Once that was launched, Merit Circle, which had its own token, which was known as MC, was actually rebranded. The whole thing was rebranded to just Beam. So Beam now exists as its own entity, but also Merit Circle exists as its own entity. And the link is that there is no specific team behind the Beam network. It is run and funded by this Merit Circle DAO. So that's really important to remember when evaluating this project. So as we can see here, Merit Circle's aim is to revolutionize gaming by making blockchain technology a cornerstone of the next generation of games. So it wants to usher in this new era of gaming. So one thing I would say, if you go out and research Beam yourself, the Beam website isn't particularly helpful because all it lists are the applications within the ecosystem. Where you actually want to head to is the Merit Circle website. The DAO is what is running and operating Beam, and that is the website that provides far more information on the Beam network. Now, integrated within all of this is the Beam token. And the Beam token is the main utility and governance token of the Beam network. Beam is required for all gas transaction fees that take place on the Beam network, so the Beam blockchain. And it's also required by those who wish to vote on the development direction of the project. And as I said before, there used to be a Merit Circle native token that was called MC. That went through and is going through, I think at the moment still, a conversion into the Beam token. And that's happening at a conversion rate of 1 to 100. So one MC token gives you 100 Beam tokens. And then in the future, Beam is going to be used for the governance of the Merit Circle DAO, which we can see on here. So explore how the Beam token is used to further decentralize the Beam ecosystem and how you can become an active community member shaping its future. So Beam is going to be the overarching token that exists within this ecosystem. Now, moving across to CoinMarketCap, Beam's current market value sits at $959 million, which places it in the mid-cap category of cryptocurrencies. Out of a maximum supply of 62 billion Beam coins, 49 billion are in circulation, which is 79% of the overall supply. So a healthy number of tokens are already floating in the market. And here on coinmarketcap.com, you can see that the coin was only launched late last year in 2023 when they went through that rebrand. So we haven't got a massive amount of historic price data for Beam, but if you go on to search for Merit Circle, and we can see that the Merit Circle coin has got data all the way back to 2021. So just a little bit of nuance around that Merit Circle Beam relationship that you need to be very careful of and aware of when you're investing into the Beam network. So now it's time to evaluate both the upsides and the risks to Beam. What are the things that could drive demand for the Beam token and therefore push its price up higher? And what are the risks to the Beam token that could strip it of its value and send it crashing to zero? And starting with the upsides, the first upside to this that is really, really good to see is Beam has partnered up with Immutable X, and in particular, Immutable X's ZK EVM, which is powered by the Polygon, the layer 2 for Ethereum. And it's helping it to scale its gaming infrastructure. So while Immutable X is a direct competitor of Beam, the two are now tightly intertwined. So it means that likely if one does well, both could potentially benefit. And if we scroll down here, we can see that the gaming focus group Merit Circle, which previously launched an Avalanche subnet, as we've already mentioned, has announced that its Sphere NFT marketplace and tech stack will now be also compatible with Immutable's ZK EVM. So a really good team up within the gaming niche and one that could benefit both projects. Next, I want to talk about Beam's recent price action. And we can see since the token was launched in November, we have seen a consistent climb all the way up to the peak in March of 2024, and that was the peak for many altcoins within the market. And that's first-hand proof that there is market appetite for this coin. And then while it's great that we've seen that push when all altcoins were climbing, we've had since then a summer slump and a retracement. And at the moment, Beam is down between 50 to 60% from its previous all-time high levels. And that means that the risk to reward profile for this project is far better than it was 3 months ago, if, however, you think the price is going to rise once again. Next up, a large proportion of the supply of Beam has already entered the market. There's only 20% of all Beam tokens left to hit the market. And as we can see on this chart, that exemplifies that. We've seen the worst of the inflation. We've got a small increase to December of this year, and then it starts to plateau after that. So in terms of the risk of future dumpage, at least from the likes of Cliff token unlocks, there isn't much risk with the Beam token. Finally, the last thing that I want to say here is that the Beam token is heavily integrated into the Beam network ecosystem. It's required by developers who wish to interact and build here, which means that if Beam is adopted, the demand for the Beam token should naturally increase with it. So those are the upsides, but what about the risks? Because all altcoin projects have risks that we need to be aware of. And the first risk for me is that while competition in the gaming industry is not necessarily fierce at the moment, it's not non-existent either. We've already mentioned Immutable X, we've already mentioned Gala Games. They've been around for arguably a lot longer. Gala Games was, of course, around in 2021 for that cycle. So will Beam be able to outperform others? Potentially, but we don't know. One could become the go-to for blockchain-based gaming, and therefore the others might become redundant. Secondly, I think a lot of the demand for the Beam token has been heavily driven by hype until now. But with regard to driving true demand through utility, the infrastructure network only has arguably a small number of games currently live, and the native NFT marketplace isn't that popular yet. You don't see it many places. Then heading back over to CoinMarketCap, the fully diluted market cap of this, as we can see, is $1.2 billion. Now, the market caps of some of the top performing gaming coins in the last cycle averaged between $5 to $10 billion. Now, although there could be a higher total market value in the whole of the crypto market, and therefore gaming coins might do even better this time around, based on historic data, does that mean that the future upside for the likes of Beam and other gaming projects, could that be quite limited? You could only see potentially a 5x from where Beam is now if it reaches a fully diluted value of 5 billion, for example. For the risk that you have to take on, does it offer enough upside, would be my question. And then finally, we are still yet to see a headline game developer adopt blockchain technology, and that is the harsh reality of it. It may never ever come. I think it will eventually happen, this is my personal opinion, but it's a risk that we need to take into account for the entire gaming industry, not just Beam. If it never comes, projects like Beam have a high likelihood of disappearing. And that's everything I have on Beam and the Beam network. Should this gaming industry coin make it into an investment portfolio? As always, I save my own personal opinions to share with my 80/20 crypto newsletter subscribers. So if that is something of interest to you and you want my own personal opinion on these projects, that is where to head. The link to the newsletter is down in the description below. I think Beam, being one of the newest contenders into the crypto gaming niche, could do really well, but the hype behind this project has been really high, and is that justified given the potential upside of a project like Beam? Which out of the gaming projects offers the most upside for the least amount of risk? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. As always, thank you so much for watching the video. I'd love to have you as a subscriber on the channel, and I will see you in the next one.